Today's guest is Rio Penn-Grice. Rio is a Tedx speaker, specifically on the topic of networking as Generation Z, which is my generation. Only 1 year after college, he has started his own marketing agency that brings in $30,000 a month. He has also traveled the world and lived the digital nomad lifestyle. Rio is a very accomplished individual and has a beautiful English accent that is enjoyable to listen to. In this episode, we talk about how to network, how to find like-hearted friends, how to meet your mentor, how to start a business, all incredible topics that you will find valuable, especially if you are in the Generation Z. I hope you enjoy. If this podcast went perfectly, and if it was seen by millions of people, what value would it add to the world?
I love that. Yeah, I was thinking about that on the way over, like you said. And I think the first one is always inspiration. You know, I think I just love inspiring other people with your story. It doesn't have to be like a crazy success story or anything like that, but just inspiring other people who might have been in your position or currently in your position that, you know, want to do more. I think that's number one, is inspiration. And I think second of all, just really the belief that if you think you can do something, you genuinely can go and achieve it. Like, you know, I don't think I've attributed myself to being exceptional in any way, apart from just the fact that, like, if I have an idea of where I want to go, I will 100% put the systems in place and the people in place to kind of reach that. And I think that, yeah, that idea of if you do put your mind to something, you can achieve it is very, very relevant in my life, and also something that I think I'd love people to get out of this for sure.
That's awesome. On the way here, I was listening to you talk with your roommate on a different podcast, and he said you were the hardest worker he's ever met. I also saw something when you said you're one of those people that says no plan B. I'm gonna introduce you, although I've been kind of, usually when I start the podcast, I introduce my guests.
Yeah.
I'm sitting down with Rio Penn-Grice.
Yeah.
He is from England. He has done a TEDx talk on how to network for the Gen Z. He was a freelance videographer, adventure photographer, drone videographer. He was traveled all around the world for different adventure sports and action stuff. And now he currently has his own marketing agency called Market You, which has just surpassed 30K a month. And I would say all these things as I just did to introduce you. What I think I'm realizing is that sometimes achievements carry curiosity. It's like, if I just interviewed Justin Bieber, people would be curious to listen to me talk because of that. And I think a lot of times we rely too much on like what someone has achieved to decide if they have an interesting story to hear. Was there something I want to focus on and really starting with this podcast is like, what value are we actually going to give to the audience? And the first thing I want to talk about is how to find like-hearted friends. Because you, in your TED Talk, you gave a speech about networking specifically for Gen Z. And we live in a loneliness epidemic. People are more lonely than ever. We're more connected than ever by the internet, but we're more disconnected than ever by emotions and our feelings.
100%.
What is your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think for me it starts with deciding who you want to be, like your identity. And that doesn't mean that you necessarily have to like be that, right? Like I could say I'm a videographer, right? But I don't have a camera yet. I don't have the skill set, but like you are that. So I think it first starts by identifying like what you want as an individual. And that's sometimes the hardest things. And it will change as well. Like it doesn't have to be locked in, but I think that's one of the things for me that helped me find those who are like, kind of like you said, like-hearted friends, was the fact that I just said, I am this, or I am doing this, or I am working on this. Like that was, you know, my thing. And then by extension, as you identify as that, you start to find people that also identify or have similarities in that space, right? So a lot of my, you know, videography, photography friends, a lot of my business friends now have all come from the fact that, you know, I'm a business owner. You know, I own this business. Oh, so am I. Like, what are some of the struggles you're going through? I have those too. And you start to build that common ground with someone. And ultimately, that's all you need, right? To start that kind of friendship, relationship, whatever it is, that common ground with someone to then extend and see kind of how far that can go.
Yeah. In your TED Talk, you said and I know this to be true, that common ground leads to deeper relationships faster.
100%.
And the internet, which we've deemed as this thing that's made us more lonely, which I think it has, it is also the greatest tool of finding common ground.
1000%, yeah.
Even me sitting down with you, no one told me to interview you.
Yep.
I wouldn't have just stumbled upon you. I mean, we went to the same college, but I never ran into you once.
Yeah.
But I found common ground because I went on your Instagram. I saw your entrepreneurial nature. I saw your adventurous nature.
Yeah.
And therefore, I thought this guy will resonate with shooting a podcast with me.
100%. And also, like what you sent to me this morning, you sent me the notion of like information that you'd drawn about me from just my socials, like LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, all of these different places. And like some of that information is a little bit outdated, right? I haven't posted for a while on like a couple of platforms. But it's like you were able to deduce like an entire page of information from me, which like you said, you would never been able to before. And it allows us to immediately when we get here, we have a common ground. We can start a conversation and sit here and record an hour podcast, no problem. Yeah.
So what Rio's referring to is I sent him the podcast research for this episode. I don't usually do that.
Yeah.
It's something that I'm testing out because the theory is that if the guest believes that I care about them, then they're more willing to open up, more willing to share their story.
Of course,
So I used to not share because it does feel a little weird. I'm sharing the research that I've done about you, and it feels like I'm also losing the shock factor of things I might bring up.
Yeah.
But what I hope is that if someone sees that I sat down for a few hours and made a whole page about their life, hopefully that tells them that I care about them.
No, I loved it. Yeah, I thought it was great. And it allows you to come more prepared into the conversation and remove any unknowns from what like what we're going to kind of talk about. And you might still bring stuff up I might bring stuff up that surprises you, you know, but it's like you have that ground. And yeah, like you said, it's nice to feel like I feel valued. You know, you sat down, you took the time to research me before I came on and spoke to your audience. And it's like, I think that's awesome. I think I really appreciate that from a guest standpoint because it's like, you took the time and that's awesome, you know?
Well, so going back to the networking thing.
Yeah.
Going back to the networking thing, a lot of people say like find. They use the word find.
Yeah.
How do I find better friends? Maybe there's someone who is our age, they're in college, they're partying, but they want to find entrepreneurial friends. But they want to travel the world, but none of their friends are willing to take that risk. And I think something you said was really important is that it comes down to your identity. When you go, I say this a lot, it's something I feel about this a lot, but when you ask yourself, position it as a matter of finding, then it's very rare that you will quote unquote find. Finding implies that you just run into people, and even if you do just run into people, if you don't have the traits that they're looking for, why would they want to stay in your network? And so that's what I think the identify thing, which you were really keen to point out, is that it's not that you actually have achieved something. When I say I'm a podcaster, which I am, that doesn't mean I have 100,000 monthly listeners. I'm doing podcasting with big guests, but just by identifying that, I'm going to attract other podcasters, other YouTubers, and that's the thing is that people, I think because of social media, they have this imposter syndrome. I can't identify as a YouTuber because I don't have X subscribers, or I can't identify as this because I don't. But in reality, your identity is your beliefs about yourself. So if you believe it, then it's your identity.
1000%. And I think taking that a little bit further as well, right? When you're at that stage, right, particularly, and I love what you said there, of like people feel they have this imposter, they feel like they need to have got 100,000 monthly listeners before they can say I'm a podcaster. It's like, no, if you're filming a podcast sat here right now, I'm a podcast guest. You know, I never thought I would even say that, but I'm a podcast guest on this podcast. That's awesome. And it's like, then when you get into those communities, you're at a networking event, you're with friends or whatever, and you tell a group of people or you speak to someone new and you say, oh yeah, I'm a podcaster. If you have not, quote unquote, achieved something yet in terms of you haven't got 100,000 monthly listeners or whatever, and you say you're a podcaster and someone asks you about it and you're like, yeah, I mean, it's just starting, like there's two reactions that someone will have, right? If they're established in your industry. So if you go and you speak to Joe Rogan, right? there'll be two reactions. And for me, that immediately turns me on or off, or whether I'm going to enjoy the relationship with that person, right? And the first reaction, if they're established and you're not, the first reaction could be that they're like, oh, that's really cool. And then they kind of brush you aside and like on to the next. The second one thing is they could be genuinely very, very excited for you and about the journey that you're about to set on and the struggles and stuff that you're about to go through, right? And those are the people that I find that I really like strongly identify with and strongly like, that's awesome. You know, no matter the stage that you're at in terms of the journey you're going through with whatever you're striving towards and whatever you identify as, it should be encouraged and you should be like cheered on. And there are going to be people that don't do that, and that's great. You can use that as motivation, but ultimately those ones that are like, that's so cool. You know, even when I was starting Market U and we were a very young editing agency, and I'd have sales call after sales call and we weren't established and it was so hard to get that sale. It was like those people that are like, you know what, this is awesome. I love that you're striving. I can see how hungry you are. I'm going to give you the opportunity. If you guys mess it up, I'm not going to continue it. It's like, that's totally fine. But they give you that opportunity to kind of grow and take to that next level. And so I think that's like kind of the key thing for me when I'm networking or speaking to people, where I really start to like identify with someone, is whether they're stoked about that journey.
So it's interesting. You're saying that it's worth it to identify as it anyways, because even if someone who's more established, who's accomplished more, even if they go, oh, this guy's claiming to be a podcaster, he's claiming to be a YouTuber, but he doesn't have 100,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
That's not the type of person you want to network with anyways.
No.
So you should always just like own it and hold it.
100%, 1,000% you should own what you identify as. And if that changes as well, that's like totally fine, right? We're all trying to figure out our pathway and where to go, what we want to do. And so, yeah, you should always strongly, and that's also where I feel like it switches between like, you don't find, like, I think that's an entire myth of like just finding people. You don't run into people, right? You attract them, like 1,000%. And you attract them through the conversations you have, with the things you identify as, and then the common interests that you have because of that, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, there's other videographers that I don't identify with and don't share the same vision as, because they're just in different industries. You know, they might be in like Hollywood film. I'm not in Hollywood film, you know? So it's like, I might not identify with those people. But it's like the community that I hold really close to me in video and photo and in business are all people that, you know, have those similar sort of beliefs in the same space, you know?
I have an interesting metaphor.
Go for it.
Say there's two people, they're trying to quit alcohol or quit nicotine or whatever. They're trying to quit something. They both stop drinking for 30 days. The first person says, when he's around alcohol, he's at a party, he says, I'm trying to stop drinking. I haven't drank in 30 days. The second person says, same thing, they haven't drank in 30 days, says, I do not drink.
Yeah.
The first person is identifying as a quitter. They're saying, I'm trying to stop drinking. I haven't drank in 30 days. They're counting the days. And therefore, they're identifying as a quitter, whereas the second person is identifying as a sober person.
Exactly.
Even though they're the same. And it's interesting, there's studies that say, if you're a criminal and you get convicted and you get called a criminal, you're way more likely to go commit another crime than if you don't get called a criminal. And so it's kind of like, I take that and apply it to what we're talking about with your identity and friendships. It's like, if I go around saying, oh, I want to be a podcast, I filmed, you're my 67th podcast.
Yeah.
I filmed 67 podcasts. That's pretty legit.
That's amazing, yeah.
99% of people quit before they hit 20.
Yeah.
Real podcast app. But I could say, well, because I don't have 100,000 monthly listeners, I want to be a podcaster. I hope that I'll be a podcaster one day. I'm like the guy who says I'm quitting alcohol. Like, it doesn't, I decide if I'm a podcaster or not, but I'm choosing to identify with someone who hasn't reached the goal, when I could easily be like, I'm a podcaster. I've interviewed 67 people. That's better than 99% of the, and so, again, like you said, you don't find friends, you attract them.
Yeah.
So if I'm saying I want to be a podcaster, then I'm going to attract people who don't necessarily believe in themselves, who are rookies. But if I'm saying I am a podcaster, then I'm going to attract better guests. I'm going to attract better people who are further along in their route. And so,
exactly. And that's actually from a book I'm listening to at the moment, Atomic Habits.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So that is the chapter I just went over, is exactly that, about how, you know, performing great habits, like getting to the direction and kind of place you want to go, starts with identification. So like who you identify as, and you know what you value as important. You know, that's kind of where that starts. So yeah, I love that.
In your TED Talk, you mentioned that if you were to get $10,000, you would become 3% happier. And you said there is a much easier way to become 6% happier. What is that?
God, dude, you put me on the spot. The TED Talk was a long time ago.
It was something to do with, I'll jog your memory. It was something to do with the 3rd degree of separation of friends. So maybe I'll explain the 6 degrees of separation while you think about it. 6 degrees of separation says that I can reach anyone in the world through 6 degrees of separation. So 1 degree of separation would be Rio is a 0 degree. He's my friend.
Yep.
If he has a friend that I want to meet, that's 1 degree.
Yep.
If he has a friend that I want to meet and his friend that I want to meet as a friend, that's 2 degrees.
Yep.
And then so on in 3 degrees. And what it's saying that I can meet anyone in the world, let's say Drake, Justin Bieber, through 6 degrees of separation. That's the theory. Now, you said something interesting that you said, there's a very popular quote. The quote goes, you are the product of the 5 people you surround yourself most with. And you said, there's an interesting quote that rallies off that says, if you show me the people 3 degrees of separation away from you, I will tell you how you're feeling.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah, so it's like you said, it's all about kind of that community that surrounds you and how that energy affects kind of your trajectory, basically, right? Because no matter someone's position, it's more about your trajectory, right? You could be a millionaire and earning $1 million a month, but you could be spending over that, right?
Yeah.
In terms of, and so your trajectory is downward, right? Yeah. It's going to a bad place where your trajectory is up. And so what that refers to in terms of the 3 degrees of separation is, you know, you've got your community of people that's your 0 degree, but those ones that are 3 degrees of separations away from you are also inherently affecting that 0 degree of separation of community around you. And so therefore, like, being acutely aware of those energies and of those people that affect your life is like kind of really where, you know, that was coming from in a TED Talk.
I think it honestly makes sense because even when I was getting excited to meet you, it's like I'm seeing the crazy things that you've done, the companies that you've worked with, the people that you've networked with. And I always I consider my friends your friends and your friends my friends. Even if we've never talked about that, that's how I look at life. So it's like, if you're associating yourself with people who have accomplished great things, and then I have you on my podcast, I feel the hope of those people.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, they're accomplishing great things and they're Rio's friends. So therefore, I'm in a world where I can accomplish great things. And
exactly.
We are hope-driven creatures.
Yeah.
We get, it's statistically proven that we're happier chasing a goal than we are achieving a goal.
Yeah.
So if I'm looking at my 3rd degree of separation, the friends of your friends, that is hope. I'm looking at a goal that I'm pursuing a goal rather than someone who's rich and they've already achieved their goals and they feel kind of more hopeless because it's not as exciting to look forward to.
No, 100%. Yeah, and it's like and it goes back to what you're talking about in terms of like loneliness and like our generation. I think it's so true, right? You know, of just how impactful being connected but not like feeling together, not feeling part of community is. And yeah, I'm so grateful for the people that I have around me currently, and I will have, you know, in the future as well, because it's very much like that. It's like I'm not only excited about what they're doing as individuals, but also the community they're surrounded by and the energy that they get from them. And, you know, seeing friends going and shooting the X Games and seeing friends out in Cape Town and working for like amazing brand names. It's just like that's exciting, and that's their community. I've got nothing to really do with that, but the fact that I can see that and get excited about the things that they're doing and the people that they're surrounding themselves with, that's when you start to create that like kind of exponential motivation and growth within a community.
You put yourself in their world.
Exactly.
And their world feels exciting.
Exactly.
You've been able to travel the world at a young age.
Yeah.
Go to a number of countries. You've shot content for Oktoberfest. You've gone to Mexico, filmed some mountain biking stuff. Did you say... Okay, no, the X Games wasn't you. That was your friend.
That was my friend, yeah.
I think that a lot of people right now are looking at the digital nomad lifestyle, which I would say you fall into it.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for how you can travel young with limited money and limited followers?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think I'm in a very fortunate position. I spent 4 months at the end of this last year of 2023 traveling. My amazing girlfriend was studying abroad, and I was able to go and join her out there basically and just travel around with her at the weekends and stuff like that. And so I was in a very fortunate position, and that was the first time I'd taken to like consecutively travel. Like normally it was just a trip here, trip there, whatever. But that was the first time I'd like consecutively traveled. And that was due to the fortunate position that Market U's put me in, of being able to be fully remote but still work, you know? And so I think for me, the digital nomad lifestyle is achievable, and content is more easily accessible than ever. But for me, it didn't like kind of fulfill that goal of what I saw the digital nomad lifestyle to be. Because a lot of it is like people just running around in the camera, going from their next paycheck to their next paycheck to try and like reach each place. And like, that's fun. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, and for a lot of people, that's amazing. And that's like, it's a lot of fun to do. I've done that a little bit myself as well. But being able to have Market U, which is something that's continuously growing, while I was traveling, it didn't like stop, you know, I think was a big goal of mine of what I wanted to do. Is I wanted to travel, but I didn't want to feel the constraints of like, oh my God, we might have to go home this month because like, I don't know if I can make it into the next. And so that for me, I think my experience was a little bit different, but my advice would just be to, really be willing to think outside of the box. Like if you're wanting to travel genuinely and you want to make it like a bit of a lifestyle, then like, you're not going to live a conventional day-to-day life. You know, you're not going to live and have a stable income, a stable job. But like, you're going to be just bouncing around from different things and trying to make it work. But you can absolutely do that. And there's, so many opportunities out there to get work, to do projects, to do the one-off thing here and there to get money. Like there's so many different ways to like be creative with when you do it. And I think that's one of the most exciting things about travel, and what I learned from this trip was that when you get forced into those like tight, stressful situations, you have one option, and that's to be creative, right? With the way in which you overcome it. And so I took that into business. Now I'm coming back here and having a stable lifestyle and not traveling every weekend. And it allowed me to like get into that mindset of like, okay, I feel under pressure. I need to be creative with my solution here to make sure I come out the other side of this on top or in a better position, and so I think that's well, that would be my advice, is get creative. Don't worry about it, just send it, like just send that trip, just book that flight. It will 100% will figure itself out. And just learn to speak to people, just go out and speak to someone at a bar, speak to your local cafe person. While we there in Spain, I really suck at languages. My girlfriend's a little bit better at them, but she developed a relationship there with the cafe right across from her school. And the woman said, if you're going to learn Spanish, I'm only speaking Spanish to you for the entire time that you're here. And so you can order in Spanish and all this kind of stuff. And it was amazing to see that kind of relationship just develop. And then she was a random stranger, and then my girlfriend there is just, speaking to her, developing that kind of relationship, that common ground. And that sort of interaction was just amazing to see. And it happens, all the time with traveling.
Yeah. We could go on a whole tangent about talking to strangers. I think to fill in the audience, Market U is your agency.
Correct, yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit on what Market U is?
Yep, so Market U is a full-service video editing agency. So they'll edit anything from vlogs to podcasts. They'll cut down podcasts into short-form content. They'll do travel content, whatever you need. And so we work with a number of different creators and then also businesses and service them to edit all of the content they need over the course of a month or however long it is that they work with us. But yeah, we've grown from, we started off with just me and another editor, and then we've grown to a team now of, I believe we're up to like 23, 17 of those are editors, and then the rest are like management, so like HR, sales, managers of the editors and stuff like that. So we've got an amazing, thriving team. I love every single one of them to the end of the earth. They're just the absolutely the best team ever, the most like amazing individuals, and to see them buy into the vision of what I was building with Market U has been amazing. And every time I'm able to reward them or put money back in their pocket beyond what they're paid, I always kind of find that opportunity to do, because they're just amazing group of individuals. So yeah, Market U is
I have a question, because you kind of went from a adventure videographer traveling the world, taking on client, then the next client, less stable, then you went to Market U. It's interesting because I think that we throw around this word passion so much. Find your passion, find your passion. And you said when you switched to Market University, when you said this story, you didn't describe it as I was passionate about, you didn't describe it as I was doing videography, but I found out I was more passionate about Market University and marketing. You said I would rather have stability. I'd rather be able to travel and have a consistent income. So making that transition, do you think, well, I guess I'm just curious, did you know that you were going to be so passionate about marketing, or was it more just the ideal of the lifestyle change that would come from doing that?
It was a combination of a couple of different things. So with Market U, it's not a university, just
okay, sorry.
No, it's good. You're good.
It's just what does the U stand for?
Just like you, marketing U.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, the transition to Market U basically came from, so I was doing freelance, I was doing a lot of travel stuff, which was fun. I got to a point where it was stable, right? Like being freelance and doing that was a stable income. Like I could live off of that. And it was totally fine. But what I really found myself, what frustrated me, is I was always limited by what I could do. Like you can't, it's pretty nuts to when you get into that space of being a good videographer, you can video every single day of the week because people just need it, right? They just really need a videographer. And so I could only ever contribute myself to a situation. It's like, oh, I can go and shoot that. I can go and shoot that. I could edit that, whatever. And I got to the point where I was like, I'm really tired of traveling all the time, and then also not being able to foster those relationships and develop those relationships that I hold very dear to me. My friendships that I have here in San Diego, the business relationships that I have here in San Diego. And I got to that point and I was like, I want to contribute to all of these people, but I need to extend it beyond myself. And by that time, I also met a key mentor of mine, and I was explaining this struggle to him, and he was like, you just need to develop out a team, and you need to develop out, your skill set and transplant that into other people, and then help kind of scale that up, essentially. And so that's when Market U was born, in that sense of okay, I want to take on less of the video side of actually filming, and I want to focus more on the editing side of things. And so that's kind of really where that developed from, is okay, this idea of I still want to contribute to all of these amazing businesses and amazing individuals, but at the same time, I can't do it myself. And so let's build a team to support all of these people.
So you were the product in a sense, because you had to be there to film it.
Yeah, exactly.
And so Market University allowed you to offer something that you're still somewhat passionate about, but instead you're now teaching it and dispersing it to other people.
Yeah, exactly. It's lovely because I get to sit on a sales call with someone who is, going through the struggles that is, video production. And I'm able to provide them with a solution, essentially, that frees up their time to work on what their true passion is. Because a lot of time, business owners, influencers, all of these people, their passion isn't video, right? They have to do it for their business.
And I agree with that myself.
Exactly. They have to do it for the business, but they're not necessarily passionate about doing it. And they want to focus on what is actually the kind of thing that brings the money to the business, which is, if you're a fitness influencer, it's filming fitness videos, or it's going to the gym and just doing more workouts, or getting bigger, or if you're a real estate agent, it's going and selling a home, but content is still a big part of that now. And so we provide a solution to people that allows them to go and do all of those things more, gives them their time back, and then also inadvertently gives them a better product. Because no offense to any of my clients, I love you all, but the videos that you were editing before you came to us were not good. And so it's we're able to also up their content in terms of volume, and then also in terms of quality. So yeah, we offer a really nice solution to the people that want to invest in content.
For you talked about in the story having a mentor and finding mentors. I've had a few mentors, although I've never had someone where I was like, I'm meeting with my mentor this Wednesday.
Yeah.
I've always just kind of had people that I looked up to and talked to, and I internally consider them mentors.
Yep.
I've never had someone approach me and be like, I am your mentor. But with mentors, you've mentioned them quite a few times. How does someone go about finding a mentor? How have you found mentors in your past?
Yeah, of course. So I think for me, there's three levels of mentorship, and I've said this on a couple of podcasts I've been on, and just said this in general. But there's the mentors that you look up to, right? They're the people that are ahead of you, the people that have achieved a lot of what you want to achieve, and there's those mentors. They're the ones that are like, hey, I'm gonna go meet with my mentor on Wednesday. Those are some of them, for me anyway. But the second group are the peers, or colleagues, or whoever you want to call them, around you that are at a similar level to you, and are striving towards a similar sort of goal, right? And then the third one for me is the people that I don't want to call it below, because that's rather wrong wording, but they're, earlier on in the journey than when you were, and you can remember when you were at that stage, and they're the people that you provide inspiration to and you can provide advice to, right?
Yeah.
And so that for me is like kind of the three levels of mentorship. And I've always been really intentional about those people that I find in my life. So the ones particularly at my level, like I need to feel like I'm part of a movement in that sense of people moving towards something, has been a big one. As I've achieved more and more success, I've had people more and more approach me and kind of like ask me how I did certain things and all that. I'm able to provide them advice, whether it's one time or, continuous conversation. That's been awesome. But yeah, then it's those people that are way ahead of you that keep you accountable as well. So, one of my business partners at Market U is my mentor. So he came into the business like as a passive partner essentially. So he's the one that helps with strategy, helps me grow it. But at the same time, I'm the one executing everything, So he comes in, helps a little bit with strategy, gives me some guidance, gives me some coaching of what I need to do. And yeah, his name is Brendan. People can search him up. He's an awesome guy. But it's like, finding that someone who will keep you accountable to what you are trying to do, and then also call you out on things and giving it to you straight. I've had so many occasions where Brendan has said to me, is like, hey, like you say you're doing this, but like you're not doing that. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I'm trying so hard. He's like, yeah, but you're not doing that. Like, I don't care whether you're trying hard. I don't care whether you've implemented this or this or this. It's like, you're not doing it. So something needs to change and you need to grow. And it's tough. Like it's hard, and I've said to him before, like, no, dude, like I'm trying this, I'm doing this. He's like, I'm sure you are, but you're not, the results aren't there. And so someone who really keeps you to that level of accountability and gives it to you super hard, like no sugarcoating, was what I needed and what I think a lot of people need as well,
Well, with the second two types of mentors, the ones that are on your level and the ones that are earlier in their journey, I would say those kind of mentors you do just attract. Again, like if you are someone in the marketing space, you'll attract peers in the marketing space, you'll attract people looking up to you. How do you attract the people who are have accomplished more or are above you? Because they're not necessarily searching out for you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I've actively seeked them. I don't think I've necessarily attracted them in that sense. I think they're attracted to certain qualities, right? They're attracted to someone who's hungry, someone who wants to achieve something, and they're attracted to someone who sticks to their word, right? So like if I went to Brendan and I was like, Brendan, I'm trying to do this, and if I didn't show up the next day to do that, then he would be like, well, it's a waste of my time, right? It's not. But they're attracted to that. And in the same way in which you have those three levels, right? They have those three levels as well. They have people that are ahead of them. They have people that are the same level of them. And if they have you, who they're mentoring, who's earlier on in that journey, right? And so they have those three levels as well. And so it's just more about ensuring that you can fall into that category and then fulfill what's expected of someone like that, who is just to be hungry, to be curious, and to ask questions, get the feedback. And then also the biggest one is just execution, right? Just like going and executing what they say, because they have more authority. Like they've done it more than you. They're way further down the journey. They've had more objective success than you. So it's like, you know, you just got to listen to it and execute. You don't need to think too much about it in that sense. But yeah, I think I've actively seeked them.
Do you think that you found them through emails or cold DMs?
So Brendan, it's funny actually. So Brendan I found through, I was at my sister's 16th birthday and we were camping out in some lakes up in Northern California because we had a boat. And we were like, it was a boat party and we had like a couple of my family friends who were with us. And my dad was like, oh, you should speak to this guy. He has like a friend who's in the video industry and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, awesome. So I got chatting to him. He was a really cool guy. And then he was like, yeah, I had a neighbor that ran a video agency and he now lives in San Diego. So I'll put you guys in a group chat and you guys can talk. And I was like, oh, amazing. Thank you so much. So he put me in a group chat and I arranged a conversation with Brendan. First call I hopped on with Brendan, he like broke me down, dude. Like he just was like, it was brutal. It was just like, whoa, I was not expecting this I was expecting like a nice conversation. He just gave it to me really straight and I was like, this is what I need. And so yeah, I ended up I started filming personal content for him. So I was still freelancing at the time. And then as I developed that relationship and I was filming for him, I was like, look, I'm looking for more than just, you know, a paycheck from you on a monthly basis. I'd love to be mentored, like seeing your success and seeing what you do. Like I would love to be mentored. And he was like, deal, film the content for me for free and I'll mentor you any time of the day, anytime you need. And I was like, amazing. And so then that
interesting. So you're willing to sacrifice money and talent so that you could get
100%, knowledge. Yeah. And then the return on that has been a booming business that, you know, it's not exclusively down to Brendan, but massively due to his guidance and his support and his coaching, you know, has brought me to, you know, this level of where I'm at now.
Interesting. Yeah. That's very, very valuable.
Okay.
When you were 18, you moved from England to San Diego.
To the Bay Area first. And
it was the Bay Area, then to San Diego. What did you learn from, like, shifting your whole life to a different country?
Oh, my goodness, dude. So much. So freaking much. It was probably the gnarliest time in my life.
You described it as, quote, the hardest time in my life.
It was pretty tough, yeah, because you feel like such an outsider.
Yeah.
Like, there's Bay Area slang, all right?
Yeah.
So I went into, like, I joined, like, the business club at, like, community college that I was at. And I went into the meeting and I was like trying to meet people and stuff. And I was listening to these two guys have a conversation. And I had genuinely, they were speaking English, but I had no idea what they just said. Like they had an entire conversation, sentences going back and forth, and I couldn't understand a word. It was genuinely like they were speaking Spanish, French, or something else.
That's funny.
And I was like, what is going on? And so I said to them, I was like, all right, not to be funny, guys, from the UK, obviously, as you can tell. What did you just say? Because I have no idea what you just said. And they were like, oh, there's a party going on later that we're going to go to. And I was like, what? I was like, I thought you were talking about some homework for another class next week. And he was like, yeah, no, it's... And so that was like kind of the epitome for me of like how outsider I felt. I couldn't even understand what people were saying. And so, yeah, I spent probably the first 6 to 8 months of being in the US just trying to understand culture. You know, it's like such a massive culture shock, trying to understand how people live, why people value certain things different ways, trying to find common ground with people when you have literally zero. I didn't even go to high school here, so I can't identify with that high school experience even. And so that's what I spent the first 6 to 8 months doing. But I'm proud of myself because it was really tough and I felt extremely lonely because you just don't have anybody that you can talk to about it. And so I was proud of myself, though. I never let up. You know, I never like gave up and was like, I can't make friendships here. It's so hard. You know, I continue to just keep trying to identify with people, keep trying to find the common ground, common interests. And yeah, over time I met friends. I had a mentor at that time that I also met through going to a Chamber of Commerce business event where I just networked with people. That
probably made your social skills a lot better.
Yeah, I always kind of regarded myself as having okay social skills. Growing up, I had a lot of opportunities to speak to family, friends and stuff that were not my age. So I was used to identifying with people that were older than me. But it 100% gave me an opportunity to, you know, really network with people here in the US. And I think one of the blessings was I was going to these networking events, which were for businesses to talk to businesses and get referrals, essentially. But I had no agenda, right? I had no business. I had nothing that I was trying to sell. Like, I was genuinely just trying to learn, right? And I was just trying to like understand what people were doing. And so I would speak to people. I would be really interested in them. And it allowed them to remember me because they hadn't had that interaction at an event like that. Like, no one was interested in what they were, how their kids were doing. Like, they were just interested in what their business was and how could they utilize their business to help them out, or if they couldn't, then move on to the next, you know? So it gave me an opportunity to really meet with some awesome people. Unfortunately, the mentor that I developed from one of those, he unfortunately passed away from a heart attack actually a couple of years ago now, and it was that was pretty tragic. I had since moving down to San Diego, we hadn't been in as much contact, but you know, still hold him very dear to my heart. And yeah, unfortunately passed away, but he was the one that really switched it on for me. He had such amazing energy and such amazing charisma when it came to like meeting people and talking to them. And so that was the first one here in the US where I really started to kind of understand what it meant to live the American dream, and then also just, you know, understand the American culture as well.
How did his passing affect you and make you grow and whatnot?
I think every passing, people always like, you know, life's short. I think that was a big one, but I don't know, it was really tough. Like it was so unexpected. You know, I immediately obviously spoke to his family and was like, you know, I'm really sorry for the loss, but I think everybody who knew him also knew how mourning over his death for like a long time would not have been what he wanted. And people going out and continuing to live their life how he had seen it and how he had experienced them was very much what he would have wanted. And so I think collectively, from what I understood from the community of people that he knew and from how I knew him, I think the biggest tribute I could have given to him was just continuing to work really hard and try and succeed at what I was trying to do. And I think that would have given him, you know, the best satisfaction.
It's a good feeling. In high school, I had a very good friend. I was kind of lonely and kind of depressed in high school. And I had a friend who studied abroad from Spain. And 7 months into his study abroad, his dad unexpectedly died.
Oh my goodness.
And he had to go home for the funeral, but he had to return to the U.S. because otherwise he wasn't going to get credit for his year.
Yeah.
And I remember expecting him to be... Sorry. I remember him expecting him to be so sad. I was like, he's my best friend, so I'm going to be there for him, but it's not going to be the same. It's going to be sad. And he came back, and I don't know internally how he felt. I'm sure it was very hard, but we laughed. We had good times. He was way happier than I expected. And seeing his happiness after his dad died is what helped me overcome my depression, because I thought all the things that I was sad about were just put in perspective. And one thing he said is, not that there's nothing wrong with mourning, it's the natural reaction, but
of course,
if someone you truly love someone and they truly love you and they die, would they want you to be so sad for them? That was an interesting thing for me, is like, how do you honor that person, how they want to be honored, you know? How do you honor that person, take what they taught you and apply it to your life? Exactly. So it's a very interesting topic. There was something with mentors that I wanted to make sure I touched on. Yep. Is you talk about the importance of having a mentor and the importance of having a mentee. Dude, I'm like biting my tongue. The importance of having a mentor and the importance of having a mentee, someone you pour into. I almost think that the mentee might be more valuable because the best way to learn is to teach. Like when you read a book, depending on how much that book resonates with you, you retain the information. But something I've been doing recently is, after I read a book, I either tell someone what I learned or I say it in a podcast. And when you try to articulate something you've learned, it's much harder. So the ability to articulate something you've learned makes you learn it more. And when you're teaching it to someone who doesn't understand it, it's so valuable. So I get really excited when there's people who are quote unquote below me or have achieved less, because it's like, I'm going in that relationship to help them, but I know it's ultimately going to help me.
Yeah, it's just like there's that synergy for sure. And I think that's one of the beauties of owning a business as well. And I think all the books I read, everything I learn, I apply back into the business. So that's like stage one of my learning is like, how do I incorporate this back in? And then number two is then like taking that into a sales conversation and selling that, you know? Like, I think there's so many situations where, you know, our service at Market U can sell in so many different ways. And I think from just like reading books, understanding different philosophies and ideologies, it's like you just sell that ideology essentially. You know, video editing is a byproduct of that, but ultimately we just sell the partnership that is working with Market U. And then video editing is something we'll do amazingly as well. But ultimately it's just like you're joining a community of top class editors, you're joining a community of people that are passionate about video, whereas you might not be as much. But it's like, you know, you're joining that kind of community of people and that kind of ideology, and so that's what you're actually buying into. And then you know, all of the edits and stuff that you get is the realization of that.
Something I've always thought about whatever I make as a product and improving the product itself. So the podcast, the vlogs, things I've done in history, I ask myself, how can I make better podcasts or how can I make better vlogs? And I think that's great. It's helped me. But something I'm starting to do is like, how do I make myself more valuable? How do I have more experience? How do I read more books? Because especially when you're in a creative industry, if you're making podcasts or vlogs, you can do so much to improve them afterward or improve the filming or improve the camera setup, but you are the product. You are a brand, and that is something, just trying to value that type of work. Not always how do I improve the podcast, but how do I improve me?
Yeah. I mean, I think you're your best investment, 1,000%. Like, I think, taking the time to invest in yourself and grow, like, I think reading over this past, I'm doing a book a month this year.
I'm trying to do too.
Yeah, and so I'm in February, so I'm on my second book. But my book that I read in January was an amazing book. It was The 33 Laws of Business and Life by Stephen Bartlett, who runs a podcast as well.
I love Steve. He's a huge podcast. It's very,
he's amazing.
How was the book? I'm actually just genuinely curious.
The book is insane. 100% read it.
Is that the most recent one? Or is that the...
I think so.
33-year-old laws of business. Dude, I gotta read it because
it's a really good book. But
he's such an inspiration.
I make a big thing of myself basically every month. Is that I buy the book that I'm reading. You know, there's Audible and all of that you can pay subscription for. But I want this like library of books. You know, and so I buy every book that I do. And so I paid like $16 for Stephen Bartlett's book to listen to, like on my phone, right?
Yeah.
And I am not even kidding. I think from that one book, the changes that I implemented must have had at least anywhere between $5,000 to $10,000 difference in the business, and that whether that was new sales or retained sales, just because we had better customer service or we had better, understanding of basically how to do business. The return on that investment of $16 was unbelievable. As soon as I saw that, I was like, okay, this is just a non-negotiable. I have to every single month read a book, and it will teach me something that can give me a return on the business and what I'm doing. And it doesn't have to be your business, but it can just be in life as well, right? Oh, this gave me, I learned this and that led to this. And so it can be more arbitrary. It doesn't have to be financial. But yeah, I think for me, seeing the return on investment of reading a book and that investment in myself has been something that, I've definitely neglected for a long time.
Well, you're identifying something super important, which is that we define work. So sometimes I've gotten this bad habit where I will think of work only as when I'm sitting on my computer and I'm directly editing something and I go, that's work.
Yeah.
But then when I work out and I'm filming the podcast and I'm sitting here with you, I won't consider it work. And it's just the way I define it in my head. But when you start like that, then the stuff that's reading, the stuff that's breath work, or all these things that drastically change and improve your life, you get in the habit of that's not work, and therefore it's less important than other things. And something I'm trying to rewire this year is exactly what you're saying, where I think of not only reading as work, but sitting down and thinking as work, as literally just okay, improving my business doesn't necessarily mean editing the next podcast. It might mean sitting down for an hour, looking at nothing and asking myself, what could be better?
1000%. 1000%. And like, I think that's one of the biggest myths. People were like, oh, I work 18 hours a day and all that kind of stuff. It's like, no, you don't. You take lunch, you have a little break, you take breaks here and there throughout the day. But, you are always thinking about what you're doing in the business or work. And I think that's very, very, very much relevant. And I think I waited until I had something like a business to really not call it work and invest in myself and realize that was a return on the business. I think I waited to that. And so I have so much respect, and I have friends that are like this, that it's a non-negotiable that they always make sure that they make time for themselves and investing in themselves, which ultimately leads them to a happier and more enjoyable life. And I have so much respect for people like that, because that's, it's not something I could do. I didn't invest in myself until I felt like I had something to get a return on that, and I didn't read books until this year. I didn't, I read the odd one here or there, but, I never really stuck with it. And it's because I didn't feel like I was getting that return, when you absolutely are, just might not be as visible as, you might think. And so, I have so much respect to people that it's a non-negotiable that every single day they always do something to better themselves a little bit. Or try and improve just 1% a little bit more, because that compound is great.
I mean, I find the interesting part of this, though, is that I have a system for how I might do my podcast. I run most of my system out of Notion. So I have the templates, the research template, the description template, the thumbnail template, the order of operations. I use an app called Things 3. And any one of those things I can pick apart. Recently, I've been picking apart the thumbnails and I can improve it. And that stuff makes a huge difference. But generally in a business, the biggest leaps are those leaps of knowledge.
Yeah.
And you can work so much that your busyness actually distracts you from the biggest growth, because it's and I'm all about the 1% mindset. I'm all about improving everything 1% daily. That's what you should just be doing if you want to be getting better. But you can distract yourself with busyness from the biggest growth, which is even recently I've been lacking on my reading. And then I read a chapter last night, and I was so inspired by the chapter that I read that I filmed a solo podcast about that chapter, and I consider it one of my best podcasts.
There you go, yeah.
And it's I wouldn't have created that level of content or had that podcast at all if I just didn't sit down and let myself read.
No, exactly. And that's why I have to speak about her, because she's truly just completely helped me grow and change my life. But my girlfriend Brooke is just so amazing with that, in the sense that, I do, when you're a CEO of a large organization, that busyness gets so prevalent, right? There's so many people that need your attention, there's clients that need your attention, there's sales calls that need your support, and there's lots of different areas in which you can jump in and be busy and help out. I can make a whole day list of tasks to stuff that I want to do if I needed to, but ultimately the business will run if I was there or if I was not, right? A couple of things might go wrong here or there, but ultimately it will run. And so that's been the biggest thing for me, and she's so amazing at helping me, just it's hey, we're going to hike this day, and it's a non-negotiable. You're going to come hike with me, and you're going to give yourself some headspace. And then I guarantee you'll get back to work later on, or, you'll get back to work on Monday, and you're going to feel so much more refreshed, and you're going to have a such more clearer mindset about where you want to go. And, we've hiked, we've done all sorts of different things that, I was I don't want to do this right now. I need to do this, or I need to have this sales call. But that persistence from her of just hey, let's do this. You will enjoy it for sure. And then to come out the other side of it, and she was 100% right every time. It was I had such a clearer mindset of what I was thinking about when I left. And that also, so that when I came back to it, I just solved it immediately rather than spending 3 hours on it. And not to say I don't like spending time with her. I love spending time with her.
No, but it's that's a trap.
Yeah. To say what?
Sorry, I cut you off. But the message of soul wealth, when I say measure success by relationships and memories, the reason that, one big reason for that is because I had a girlfriend, and every time I was with my girlfriend, I was thinking about how the time could be spent toward work.
Yeah.
And so it's like, in America specifically, a lot of us get our identities from our career.
Yeah.
And when you get your identity from your career and you're an entrepreneur, you're the CEO, you're the creator, then you idolize work. And when you idolize work, you cut off time with people.
Yeah.
But the worst part of it all is that it doesn't actually make you more successful.
No, exactly.
I'm reading this book called Feel Good Productivity by Ali Abdaal. He's a doctor, a YouTuber,
Yeah.
productivity expert. And the whole book is just scientific study after scientific study that proves the more joyful you are, the better you feel, the more productive you are.
Exactly.
We've created this equation that productivity is hours in equals productivity out.
Yeah.
So that if someone works 50 hours, they're more productive than someone that works 40.
yeah.
But it's not true.
No,
The
it's
truth
all
is
about the leverage.
if I show up joy-filled, I mean, and like I can take this to the extreme. This is a bad example, but imagine like a super athlete sits down to do work, and imagine like someone who has stage 4 cancer sits down to do work. It's like, who's gonna do it faster? The one who feels better. Yet we're telling everyone to wake up at 4 a.m., and sacrifice sleep, and do all these things, but
No, and it's all about finding that balance for sure. And I totally agree with you. And a mindset that I had a long time ago was just like work. And I have definitely, I still work a lot, but I've definitely, made sure I carve out time for the things that are important. And the irony is that, the higher up people that you meet in terms of have had success, or those more mentors that you meet, is like, they've really valued their personal time and their life with their family and their kids or their wives or whatever. And so that's something that I've, really taken into an account, that, it's a broken mindset to think that you should be working all the time and not take those breaks. Because you're right, like, it makes you joyful. It makes you happy to spend that time with those people. And then, like you said, you go back into a sales conversations, you go back into talking with someone else in the industry, and you're able to then be like, you're happy. You're way more likely to have a successful conversation, and people also really respect, like, anybody who like has been a good business partnership in terms of like a client of ours or something. Anybody who respects that time, if I'm like, hey, I know you requested to book a call here for 10 a.m. here on Friday, but I've actually got something booked with my girlfriend, and we're going to spend time doing this. Every successful client relationship that I've had would have responded to that with like, no worries, that's amazing, I hope you have a lovely time with your girlfriend. If someone's like, fuck you dude, like, I'm trying to get some stuff done here, it's 10 a.m. on a Friday, like, what are you doing? Like, then it's like, okay, that's not a business partnership that I want to be part of, And so really starting to understand what's valuable to you and why that's valuable, and then ensuring that you can obviously bring that back into your daily life, I think is really important.
That even goes back to, I mean, we were talking about way in the beginning of the podcast, is thinking about the people above you, and do you want to attract them, or do you want to be like them? Which, in this example, it's like, you might be someone who puts crazy hours in, and that might lead to success. And I know you're a hard worker, and I'm a hard worker too, so I'm not advocating that you're just lazy. But it's like, even if hours in did equal direct productivity, is that the lifestyle you want?
No.
And I think that a lot of people think that when they get more successful, they're going to do less work. But generally, it means more employees, more providing, more. So you're probably going to do more work. I mean, if you're smart like you can disperse the business. But that's the issue with hours in equals productivity out, is that you, even if you do succeed, you're setting yourself up for a lifestyle you don't want. Because if I were to ask you, hey, you can have $1 million, but you have to be busy 95% of the hours in your day, it's like,
no, why would I do
what
that?
Does that even do for you?
And like that, you're 1,000% correct. If you're not doing it now and you want to do it, then you're not going to do it way down the line. And when you have a successful business, it's just not true. Like, if you want a successful relationship, you should prioritize having a successful relationship with that person. If you want to read books, then you should read books right now. You're not going to start reading books when you're a millionaire, because you wouldn't have got to being a millionaire. It's like, that goes back to that, the people that really prioritize their lifestyle, for me, is like so amazing. Because I think I did wait to have a business to be like, oh, you know what, I can go and take some time off to do this. I can spend time with my friends. You know, I can go out with my friends for this time or whatever. And obviously you want to do that in moderation. You want to do everything in moderation. But, you know, like you said, it really comes down to ensuring that, you know, you feel that, you know, you're getting a return on your time. But then also, you know, those times that you take off are investments in self and in growth, for sure.
So, I mean, talk about this. Something I struggle with, and I'm assuming you struggled with it based off the research I did, is shiny object syndrome. What shiny object syndrome means is you always want to do the next thing. So for me, I started vlogging in 2019. Then I did music, and then I did stand-up comedy. I'm doing podcasting. I want to do keynote speaking. Yes, those all kind of align. And so I could probably do two or three of those things, but the issue is that I spread myself so thin that I didn't create any depth in any of those areas. And I know it seems now that you are very dialed in with your marketing university, but it seems that you did many things in the past. How did shiny object syndrome hold you back or not hold you back? Or what did
Definitely.
you do?
I think shiny object syndrome for me was so prevalent up until probably like 2 years ago. I was the same as you. There was similarities between what I was hopping between, but I was podcasting, vlogging. I would, you know, work on a job here and do like, it was just, and it, you know, kind of freelancing fed into that because you're always hopping from one thing to the next, always trying to get the best client, all of that. So like, it all kind of fed into that. And so, it was, just constantly hopping between the next best thing. And I'd give it always kind of extended, you know, I'd give it like a month, I'd give it 2 months, I'd give it 6 months. But I never really topped a year. It was like kind of the longest I stuck with anything. But I think that comes down to maturity and finding your purpose and finding your why and growing in a certain area. And so, when I think one thing that was consistent for that whole time, though, was that even though I jumped between like podcasting and all that, I've always been in the creative industry. And then when I started doing video, I have for the longest time told people that I'm a videographer and I do video. And like you said, the further deeper you go into stuff, the more you get known, the more referrals there are, and basically ultimately the bigger return you get. Like I get calls now randomly for like video projects that there was a relationship with someone that I did like a video project for them like 2 years ago, or didn't even do a video project. They just knew that I did them because I was at school with them or something. And I get a call from them and they'll be like, hey, you know, my parents have this thing going on, or my dad's business has this thing. Like, I immediately thought of you when they said they need some video stuff. Like, is that something you're open to? You know, sometimes it's yes, sometimes it's not. But it's like, you just have people randomly hitting you up for like those kinds of things. And it's like, that's still for me just the biggest like brain fuck, because I can't like, I'm like, that's so wild. Like, does someone would still think of me that far ago to like, you know, that I would do that kind of thing. And so, I think just once you've found something you are genuinely quite passionate about, just like sticking with that, it's only a matter of time until you reach or start reaching the metrics and goals that you want to achieve. As long as you constantly talk to people or constantly striving to get a bit better at it, you know, keep working at it. But once you pick a path, as long as you just stick with that, you will find success without a doubt. And I think honestly, that's the biggest part of success. And for startups in particular, you know, like the stat is like 80% of startups fail in the first 5 years or something like that. And so I think like that's the biggest thing for a startup is like, not only are you just trying to, you know, being persistent in the vision of what you're trying to achieve with the startup, but secondly, you're trying to survive. Like monetarily, you're trying to raise the money to ensure that you have, you know, the funds to continue the project. And so I think, anything that's worthwhile, if you think it's worthwhile, you should persist for as long as humanly possible, because you will find success. And every time, there's been a couple of times where I thought with Mark U, I'm like, I'm done. I can't do this. Like, it's so hard. You know, trying to get the sale was incredibly hard, like I said early on with, you know, trying to just get that return, like get sales going, which took the longest time. And so I think that was the biggest thing for me. And every time I would meet with Brendan, I would speak about that, or I'd talk to, to a friend and be like, oh my God, I think I can do this. Now I do. Just persist. Just keep going. You'll be totally fine. You've had an amazing success so far. And genuinely, like the last 2 or 3 times I've had that thought, the next day, a big deal would come through the door, or a big change would mean that we were able to reach more clients or improve our editing. Like there would be a huge breakthrough literally the day after I went to bed after feeling like I can't do editing,
I definitely can relate to that with the podcast, where I committed to doing 2 episodes a week, and there's times where I'm coasting. I'm a month ahead. Have everything settled. Like this episode right now is going to be posted next Thursday. I've been in a period where I'm filming and I'm posting the same episode I'm filming. And that actually has some benefits because the guest remembers it more. They're more likely to share it because it's been more recent. But I get to points where in my podcast, I don't think I've ever been debating quitting because I love it so much, but just so like, dude, I don't know what to do. And just trying to not get caught up in that loop of what do I need to do, and just keep going, just be present, just keep going. And then again, 5 people will hit me up. I'm down to go on the buyer, and then it's like, you're like overwhelmed. You went from nobody to now you have a month of people. So that happens a lot. But going back to the shiny object syndrome, there's something I want to say about that, which is I used to see my shiny object syndrome as such a bad thing because I would always tell myself, if I just did YouTube from May of 2019 when I started it, if I did YouTube and I never tried music and I never tried a comedy and I never tried podcasting, I would be successful now. That's what I used to tell myself. But the issue was that I defined success as money, views, likes. I probably would be in those metrics. I'd probably be more successful.
Yeah.
But hey guys, Future Aussie here. If you're enjoying this episode, please leave a 5-star on Apple or Spotify. This helps me get discovered and it really helps grow the podcast. And if you do that, I will continue to invest in the podcast and make it the best it can possibly be. Just to acknowledge, we have switched to the iPhone.
Yeah.
I'm actually curious, if any of you guys think that the footage looks better than the camera, please comment below. I might start integrating iPhone shots into the podcast.
Yep.
I was going on a rant about shiny object syndrome and how I used to see it so negatively, but now I really see it as a positive because I got to experience things that I probably won't be able to experience when I'm so successful. Because when I have a ton of success and I'm providing for a wife and a family and employees, that I'm not going to be able to experiment with things such as stand-up comedy. Maybe I can because I'm in the podcasting career, but most of the time you can experiment less. So shiny object syndrome was a blessing. Not that enthusiastic to say that because you've been off the camera for so long.
Yeah, no, it definitely is, and it comes down to the journey. Like just being just being passionate about the journey that you're on, and it's fine. I think you don't want to be doing shiny object stuff for too long, right? But ultimately, you're absolutely right. Like it's not bad when you have the opportunity. When it's time to knuckle down, when you found your thing that you're passionate about, like podcasting or whatever it may be. Like when you knuckle down and do that, yeah, of course, stick the path, all right, on doing that. But at the same time, yeah, you're right. I think early on, it's not a bad thing to do because it helps you find what you're passionate about. And once you have, then you can stick with that and just go really deep into that one thing. Because ultimately, one thing I found when I had shiny object syndrome and I was jumping from one hot thing to the next and all of this, like, I didn't realize how much it takes to invest time into one thing.
Yeah.
And Alex Ramosi talks about this a little bit, where it's like the audacity to think that your best on 4 different things is going to be better than someone else's best on one thing is the most arrogant thing you could ever have, right? Like ultimately, if you focus on that one thing, you might get the chance of being successful at that one thing, right? If you focus on 4 things, I guarantee you'll be a lot of stress and it'll be a bunch of shit things, like over the long period of time, right? If we're talking about, really trying to go into a number of different businesses. Now, everyone might be like, that's super hypocritical, Rio, you're opening another business, which you're going to talk about in a minute. But it's like, mine is like kind of, they're vertically integrated with each other. One business is going to benefit the other business and so on. And so it's kind of like they're almost the same thing. It would be like opening a new department of the business, essentially. And so that's slightly different. But yeah, when you have like a marketing agency, and then you have you're a full-time YouTuber as well, and you have all of these different things, it's like, if you don't plow your time into one thing, you don't have even the opportunity of potentially making that success.
Yeah. And you're detaching. So like you said, with your first business, Market you can, ideally you wouldn't do this, but you can remove yourself from the business and it can run. I think there's people like Stephen Bartlett and Warren Buffett who have stakes and they're parts of hundreds of companies.
Yeah.
Or I don't know if hundreds is the right, but many companies. And it's not that they're spreading themselves amongst those. They're essentially a mentor for other people who run the company, so therefore they get to take some profit. But let's get into the next thing you're opening, which is called Dune.
Dune Media House, yeah.
Yeah, can you just explain what that is?
Yeah, so someone that I'm sure you'll have on the podcast soon, Zach Fleischman. Freaking love the dude. He's like my brother from another mother, for real. I love him so much, but he's probably he's got his head screwed on with business, but then also just in terms of his creativity and his vision, he is one of the most like pure creatives I've ever met. There's a couple of people I know like that, and he's definitely one of them. We get on, we have a lot of synergy. I love working with him. And essentially, I got to a point with my freelance work where between Market You and then filming content, it was not becoming viable for me to spend my time filming content, right? And being a freelancer. And so I love providing that service to people because it provides a lot of value and creating really special visuals. And Zach is moving back to San Diego soon. So I called him up before Christmas and I was like, why don't we just do this together? Why don't we I can do business stuff and work on the back end and get the sales, and you can execute all of the creative stuff.
Wow. Can that pass by?
There you go. You do a podcast up there one day.
Oh, yeah. We're definitely going to do the Chopper cast.
Absolutely. For sure. But yeah, so basically he's going to be then heading up the creative side and taking care of all of that. But yeah, we're just so excited to create amazing visuals for brands, for individuals, for companies. We're really focused on like kind of the higher end stuff. So we work on retainer with some people, but mostly just high end commercial work is kind of where our focus is. We're a big believer that absurdity is what a brand is known by. So they're, known by their most absurd thing that you associate them with. So, in a lot of cases for people with me, the most absurd thing about me to an American person is that I have a British accent. So that's kind of funny. But like in terms of a brand is helping them identify and find what that absurd thing is that they want to be known about, and every brand has it if you look, really closely into them. Stephen Bartlett talks about this idea in his book. They had a green slide in their office in Manchester when he had a marketing agency, and that green slide cost $30,000 to install, right? Which is an insane investment for a slide. But whenever a Forbes, Times, whoever came to do an article on the business, they spent about 70% of their time talking about this blue slide. And so this marketing agency essentially became known for this blue slide. They were like the Blue Slide Agency. That wasn't their name, but they became known as that. And so this absurd thing, which actually stood for the belief that they were young, creative, new, and interesting, became their whole persona of like this company of what they're about. And so that $30,000 investment ultimately turned into, a bunch of business. But that's what we are a really big believer in for the brands that we work with. We're passionate, we're adrenaline junkies. I love motorbikes, he loves skydiving, all of these different things. And so we want to really connect those two and bring them together to create, really special marketing material for a brand and for a business. And so, yeah, we're really passionate about that. And that's going to be launching officially on my birthday, which is on the 21st of February. So excited for that. But just excited for him to arrive back in San Diego. We've already been able to sign a couple of contracts with some amazing people and some amazing projects. So excited to get working on those. But just excited to grow something with my best friend and create a really special brand that people can be a part of. And then another part of that is also the community side of it. You know, we really want the creator community, but then also just the community of people that really believe in content. We really want to find a way to kind of give back to that community, whether it's through events, whether it's through workshops or whatever we are going to do. But that's another big thing that we want to ensure that we have in our mind when we're coming to that.
You should definitely, if you guys can, or even if just you can, try to come to Joshua 16 to 18 because that's my vision too. When I ask myself what makes a relationship valuable, I've thought about this question many, many times. And the number one answer for me personally is conversation. The quality of your conversation changes how, if I go to a college party and we're gossiping, we're talking about how wasted we're going to get in this, well, I'm going to forget about that conversation tomorrow. It's not going to do anything. But if I'm talking with you and I'm seeing, oh, Rio's building 2 companies, he's doing all these things. Well, now that makes me, after the podcast, want to go change my life. So those conversations, but something I think that is very, it's acknowledged, but it's underspoken, is being a connector. So if you connect me to Zach, and let's say me and Zach become best friends, and let's say I don't talk to you in the future, not because we had a falling out, just because we're busy or whatever. It's like I'll forever associate my best friend with you just because you connected me. And that's like the concept of later this month, I'm bringing a bunch of creators to Joshua Tree so that they can meet each other. And I'm trying to be intentional, like, adventure videographers. Let me bring my adventure videographer friends from Texas, from Arizona. And so now they can all meet each other. And I'm probably not going to be inserted with them because I don't really do adventure cinematography. But if they ever go on a trip together, if they ever do these things, they're going to associate that relationship with me. And so being a connector is huge. I also don't want to lose that idea of what you were saying with the blue slide, because I think that's so special. In my research for you, I acknowledge something that I've seen before, which is creating a story people want to be a part of. It's like, why does Red Bull pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to send people skydiving from space? Like, that's a very absurd, crazy investment. Well, it's because people associate that event with them. They associate that absurdity with them. They want to be, there's 100 different energy drinks, but Red Bull represents the one that is with the absurdest level of adventure. Same with when Nike started, they gave Jordan such a crazy deal. It's like, why did they care that Jordan wore their shoes? Because now they're associated with Jordan. And even this past summer, I walked 150 miles across Spain. And before that event podcast versus after that event podcast, I didn't have more listeners. I didn't have better view counts. But after that happened, people were way more eager to come on my show because they associate, oh, that's the kid who walks 150 miles across Spain. And so that absurdity thing, I love it. It's such a interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're creating, and that's what I said is kind of, is when I first came to the US, that the standout absurd thing about me was I was British and I had a British accent, right? That's kind of worn off a little bit. And I've started to develop my own levels of absurdity in terms of, business stuff that I'm doing, and then also just passions that I have. Zach is just an absurd individual. Like his just skydiving and just the way he goes about his life is just absolutely absurd, and I love it. And so, that's why he's such a memorable individual. But yeah, that's like you said, it's what creates you, what makes you a memorable individual is the people you connect, but then also how absurd are you in someone's mind, in terms of your success level, in terms of the impact you've had on their life. Like, there's so many different ways in which you can create that impact and that memory in someone's mind. And just implanting that is so key.
It all goes back to soul wealth, relationships and memories.
Exactly.
I do want to ask you my outro question, which is related to soul wealth.
Okay.
The reason I ask this question is because it gets people to reverse engineer their life. And the question is, when you die, what do you want people to say about you? Like, you're gone, people are in the room, they're talking about you. If everything went perfectly, what would those people be talking? What would they be saying about you?
Oh, that's a great question. I think when I die, what I want people to kind of remember or talk with me about has got nothing to do with me. I don't think I would want my name mentioned. I think I would love the brands that I build, the businesses that I create, and the people that I impact. I want their names to be known more than anything. And, sure, my name by association, but, I don't want, like Market U, for example, like I do not ever put my name next to that. It's like, it's Market U, it's the group, it's our family, it's the identity that we have. I have that internally with the employees and the team members. I have that with our clients. They don't sign up and they're not just a client, they're a member of our family. Like when you become part of Market U, you're a member of the family. We care about you, want to treat you really well and get the best result. And so I think for me, it's about when I die, I would love people to talk about the identities that I created and the environments that I created for people. And I would love them to just continue that and enjoy that. And just develop it and continue the message that we created for, my lifetime. And so I think it would have nothing to do with me. I don't think I would even want someone to even remember my name. I think it would just be more like, wow, Market U is a special place to be. Or, wow, June Media is just an amazing community to be a part of.
Yeah.
I think that for me is what would mark myself as being successful in that sense. That I've made an impact beyond myself in the people that I have work for me, but then also the people that come into contact with that community.
Yeah. Well, bro, that's a beautiful answer.
Yeah.
Let's wrap it up here.
Pleasure, man. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you, dude.
We're gonna have to grab a Polaroid here and some thumbnail pictures, but
Peace.
yeah. All right, good. That didn't cut off.